I'm Michael Steele in for Joy tonight. We begin with the reality we've known for months that is now becoming more and more clear by the day. The Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump. Just over 24 hours from now, polls will be closing in the next primary state of Michigan, where it is likely that once again, the twice impeached, 4 times indicted former president will be taking home a slate of delegates, bringing him one step closer to the Republican nomination. That's what we saw over the weekend in Nikki Haley's home state of South Carolina, where Trump won by 20 points, receiving just under 60% of the vote. Not exactly the overwhelming victory someone who is essentially an incumbent would hope for, but still a clear sign that the party is decisively his for the taking. And it appears that many Republicans, even those who have up until this very moment resisted bending the knee, are accepting this reality. Like, for example, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Despite the fact that the senator hasn't talked to Trump since before January 6, 2021, NBC News is reporting today that top advisors to McConnell and Trump are engaging in behind the scenes, you guessed it, conversations about a potential endorsement of the former president. Then there's Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel, who earlier today officially announced that she will be stepping down from her post after the former president all but forced her out. To no one's surprise, Trump is endorsing hand-picked loyalists, including his daughter-in-law, to take her place, clearing the way for Trump to rebrand the RNC just like he did his buildings as a real estate developer, which we all know how that turned out. Much like his Atlantic City casinos, he's going to run the party straight into the ground, eviscerating all that's left of the once proud GOP, and with it, the legacies of Eisenhower, Reagan, and Bush. Joining me now is Doug Jones, former Democratic senator from Alabama and distinguished senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, and Tara Setmayer, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project and former Republican communications director. Welcome to you both. So Tara, this is a moment. The party is now fully Trump. Its base is his, its infrastructure is his, its dollars and donors are his. How does this all turn out?
Well, I would argue, Michael, that the party has been his for quite some time. And you mentioned Mitch McConnell earlier in your setup. And, you know, Mitch McConnell had an opportunity to vanquish Trump, as did many Republicans after January 6th. I mean, the guy led a violent insurrection against the United States. And, you know, for the first time ever in history, a peaceful transition of power was interrupted and incited by Donald Trump. And that wasn't enough. And Mitch McConnell at the time gave the speech of his career about Donald Trump and about what he did, but yet used some constitutional argument to say, well, it should be in the courts. We shouldn't do it here, where they could have convicted him in the Senate. And we wouldn't be here now because Donald Trump would no longer be eligible to run for president. So you have Mitch McConnell now, which I'm not surprised. At the Lincoln Project, we've been saying this. All of these guys would fall in line because of political power and cowardice. And then you have the RNC, which has been pretty much a campaign arm of the Trump campaign for several years. But they've their final step now is that they're going to bring in his daughter-in-law to be the co-chair. I mean, Michael, you know what it's like to run the RNC, and these are the people they're putting in charge. It's all a grift. It's because of money. They want to be able to funnel money now to Donald Trump because of his legal bills. So the idea that the Republican Party is not in the image of Trump until now, all of a sudden, this is not a revelation. This has been going on now for several years, and every opportunity they've had to off-ramp from them, they haven't. They put their foot on the gas and embraced him, and it's now become a party that's unrecognizable, a party that is okay with a twice impeached, criminally indicted, pro-authoritarian, malignant narcissist who has no problem wanting to tear up the Constitution on day one and become a dictator. Great Republicans. That's a great brand, I guess. Yeah,
it's a good branding moment for them, I think. You know, it'll work out, sure. Doug, I think, you know, to much of what Tara said, you have that political storyline unfolding today. But more importantly, you also have a sort of a quasi-policy storyline unfolding, as NBC News reporting that Biden and Trump are holding competing trips to the U.S.-Mexican border on Thursday to talk border. Oh, my gosh, we're actually going to talk about the border. So on the one hand, it's about time. President Biden really kind of put that front and center for himself and particularly, I think, take advantage of the opportunity that, on the other hand, Republicans failed to take advantage of by actually supporting a border legislation that the Senate and the House presumably tried to pass. What's your take on what we are looking for on Thursday?
Well, you know, Michael, I think so many people are making a lot of the fact that Biden and Trump will be there on the same day. But I think it was really important that the president go to the border before the State of the Union on March the 7th. I think that that's the more important story here, because he has now seen that the Congress is not going to do anything. There was such high hopes for some border security measures for what everybody knows is a very serious problem down at the southern border. And there were such high hopes. You had a conservative Republican negotiating in good faith with a couple of Democrats, hammering out a very significant bill, one of the toughest in decades. But yet Donald Trump tanked it, just like he tanked one in 2018 when I was there. So the president is having to do this now. You know, look, people have criticized him for not doing more, but his hands are really tied a lot on the border. And the fact is, he is an institutionalist. This is a legislative session. He's been waiting for that. He had that in his hand, and now he doesn't. And he's got to go to the border. He's got to do some things on his own and hope it'll pass legal muster. So I think that's going to be the real story.
And I think that's an important story, to your point. And I think you're right to have the president do this before the State of the Union really kind of sets up narratively the storylines that he'd like to explore in his speech on that evening. But I think there's also another storyline, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, unfolding in Michigan this week with its primary, and the fact that you have a growing number of disaffected, particularly younger voters over the policy, such as it is, in the Middle East with respect to Israel and Palestine. How do you think that piece fits into this storyline as well for the president?
You know, that is a very difficult needle for him to thread right now. He has got to support Israel. That is the pro-democracy line that he has had. He has supported Israel for a long time, but he's also been a very strong supporter of a two-party state. That is a two-state solution. He has been really out there pushing that. And I think what you're seeing publicly, you're seeing the administration moving more and more to try to figure out how to get a ceasefire, get those hostages home. What we don't see, and I hope people recognize this, you're not going to see most of what this administration is doing playing out in the news media or on social media. There is a lot that Anthony Blinken and the national security people are doing behind the scenes. And I think they're putting more and more pressure on the Netanyahu government to come to a ceasefire, to do those things necessary, get humanitarian aid. And what I'm hoping is that will happen sooner rather than later. And that as we get closer to the election, folks that are disaffected right now, and I understand that. I mean, I get that. They're going to see the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and they'll come back home.
So Tara, meanwhile, back in Happy Land, CPAC occurred this past weekend. And as you know, from when we used to go to CPAC, at the end, they'd always do a straw poll. And, you know, whether it's for the president, well, that's not relevant this time because everybody's in the tank for Trump. But they did a vice presidential straw poll. The CPAC Veep straw poll shows that South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem at 15%. Vivek Ramaswamy, how did he get up there? 15%. Former Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard at 9%. Elise Stefanik, whom everyone thinks is kind of like an odds-on favorite, at 8%. Tim Scott, wow, Tim. 8% after all of that. And I think it's important to note that, you know, a lot of folks have been talking up the whole Kristi Noem Trump angle. What's your take here? How do you see these sweepstakes sort of playing out?
Well, you and I both know from our years at CPAC that the straw poll isn't exactly the most scientific or reliable poll. I mean, Ron Paul used to win that thing all the time. So I'm going to dismiss that as anything that's serious. But I can also tell you, those who know, Kristi Noem will never be vice president. She'll never be a pick for Trump because of some of her behavior with other people in the Trump circles. So that will disqualify her off the top. And again, this is one of those celebrity, contests where it's like, oh, who was there, who was top of mind, and oh yeah, we like Kristi. No, it's not. It's not happening with her. Now, Elise Stefanik, on the other hand, does have a greater chance because she has been an absolute sycophant. And she has decided to completely sell her soul to remake herself into a Trumplican in ways that are hard to imagine that someone could be such a polar opposite of what they used to be when they first came into Congress. Elise Stefanik is a perfect example of that, of someone who's sold everything out for political ambition. So to the point where she's defending Donald Trump in his comments, calling January 6th defendants and prisoners political prisoners. I mean, it's really pretty obnoxious and outrageous with how low she has gone. But I mean, she's just par for the course. The fact that I just have to go back to the Mitch McConnell thing for a second. The fact that Mitch McConnell, seriously, Michael, that Mitch McConnell would even be considering endorsing Donald Trump after everything that Trump has done to him as well. I mean, calling his wife all kinds of ethnic slurs, calling him a piece of crap, according to Maggie Haberman's book, making fun of him and his age, saying all of these disparaging things about him. And Mitch McConnell can't stand Donald Trump. He knows that he is someone who isn't a serious person, but he's willing to do this, which is like if McConnell comes out and endorses Trump, what that does is that once again, it opens up the others in the Senate and other donors to say that Donald Trump is someone we can still support, despite everything he's done.